In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And when you hear the word from God, it will enable you to experience your divine nature. We're going through the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9. And he said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that there be some of them that stand here, which shall not taste of death, till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. Now this is a very intriguing chapter or section, wherein the transfiguration of Jesus is going to transpire. But just prior to that, Jesus is making a prophecy. And the prophecy is that, Verily I say unto you, that there be some of them that stand here amongst you, there will be some here which shall not taste of death, which shall not experience death, till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. Till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. This is a very intriguing statement. In fact, for one of them it is certainly described. That is for John. John was one of the disciples, and when he was imprisoned in the island of Patmos by the Romans at old age, he had this vision. Till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. Therein he had a very unusual experience. And in that experience he saw Jesus along with the angels come to him. And John was pretty old at that time. He was nearly 90 years old. And he experienced that. And out of that experience, wherein Jesus appeared to him along with the angels, and he saw them, and they spoke to him. And they also gave a revelation. Jesus gave a revelation there about the kingdom of God. About the kingdom of God. And in that revelation, Jesus had told John, along with the angels, to transcribe everything that he had seen and heard, to transcribe it into language. So what he heard was what was revealed in the Revelations, the book of Revelations. And then in a mysterious manner, John was taken up into the heavens. And he experienced an experience in heaven. So that is why the kingdom of God come with power. So therein he experienced something unusual. And that experience is described in the book of Revelations. The book of Revelations, but he had experienced, but he had seen with his eyes. So on one hand, he had seen an unusual experience wherein he was taken to the heavens and shown certain factors there, certain matters. And also at the same time, he was asked to transcribe or take it down in writing certain matters which he had heard and seen. And that is the book of Revelations. So therefore, what Jesus said here as a prophecy had come true. Now, as for the others, how many others? No one knows. No one knows how many others had a similar type of experience, how many other disciples. But at least one, it is very clear and sure, and that is John, who wrote the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is attributed to him, and he had this experience. So therefore, Jesus makes this prophecy. It's a prophecy of Jesus. Then after this was over, after 6 days, then Jesus taketh with him Peter and James and John, and leadeth them up into a high mountain, apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. Thereafter, after 6 days, after this statement was made, Jesus taketh with him Peter, James and John, and leadeth them up into a high mountain, and took them into a high mountain. Only those three, apart by themselves and nobody else, only those three along with Jesus. And therein something wondrous happened. And he was transfigured before them. And Jesus underwent a transfiguration. Now this is something very remarkable, transfiguration of Jesus. As to why it happened, how it happened, is something mysterious, which I believe the Christian world is unable to decipher the purpose and the significance of this transfiguration, its meaning and sense, Now, what does it mean, transfiguration? All of you may know that you can transmute one substance into another substance. That is how in ancient days, the science of alchemy about 300 years ago was introduced, and people try to convert base metals into gold. They were trying various chemical processes by which they can transmute base metals like bronze and copper into gold, but they didn't succeed, but they tried to. So that's called transmuting one element or one substance into another substance. So here what had happened, the same thing. Jesus transfigured himself from a Jesus into an ethereal being, transfiguration. So and why did he do that? Why did he show that? Why did Jesus show this transfiguration? There is a reason for it. So in transfiguration, the person, the human individual, gets transmuted from one substance into another. So prior to that, a person was a human individual. But what happened later? When Jesus was crucified, after 3 days, his resurrection took place. After 3 days. Now that process wherein Jesus underwent in the bowels of the earth, during those 3 days and 3 nights, he underwent a transmuting, he was transmuted from Jesus, the individual, to the resurrected Christ. To the resurrected Christ. And the transmutation happened over a period of 3 days and 3 nights. That is why time and again, Jesus earlier was also saying, Jesus was saying earlier, what did he say? Even in the 8th chapter, he said that he would be, the scribes and the priest would kill him, and he be killed. He would be killed, and after 3 days rise again. That was mentioned. The Son of Man must suffer many things, be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. After 3 days rise again. So that is exactly what did happen to Jesus. When he was crucified, after 3 days, he was resurrected as the Christ. He was resurrected. He was resurrected. Now, the remarkable thing is, Jesus, as it is popularly understood, was not crucified on a Friday. He was not crucified on a Friday. He was crucified on a Wednesday. That is why Jesus was saying he would remain in the bowels of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days and 3 nights. And what are the 3 days? So at that time, the Jewish Sabbath was on a Saturday, not on a Sunday. The Sunday became the Sabbath day for the Christians. But for the Jews, the Sabbath day was Saturday. And the Jewish calendar was counted from dawn to dusk. From dawn to dusk. That's how it is calculated. A day begins at dawn and ends at dusk. Dawn and dusk. The Romans had the other concept wherein after 12 midnight, the new day begins. As per the Roman calendar, it begins after 12 midnight. And that is the same thing that everybody is observing today. 12 p.m., after 12 p.m. midnight, then the next day, that's the Roman calendar. While in the Jewish setup, it was considered to be from dawn to dusk, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So now Jesus says that it is indicated that he would rise again after 3 days. So therefore, he was crucified on a Wednesday, and Wednesday evening, in the morning itself, but then his body, the last breath was round about 3 in the afternoon, 3, and by 9 o'clock, he was presumably dead, or he has left this body. He was presumably. So then thereafter, so that means Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night. These are the 3 nights. And 3 days. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The whole of Saturday. So thereafter, after 6 p.m. on Saturday, after 6 p.m. on Saturday, as per the Jewish calendar, anytime Jesus would have got resurrected. Therefore, on Sunday morning, when Mary Magdalene and Mary went to the cave to see where, apparently to see Jesus or Jesus's body, they found he was not there. He was not there. The stone had been moved and he was not present there. So they went there on Sunday morning. Sunday morning. But anytime after 6 p.m. Saturday and the ensuing 12 hours, Jesus would have been resurrected at any time. So therefore, his crucifixion took place only on a Wednesday. Only on a Wednesday. And Wednesday morning, he was sentenced. He was taken to court at 9 o'clock in the morning. And by 12 o'clock, there he was. And by 3 p.m., he was taken to Golgotha, to Calvary, wherein he was crucified. And by 9 p.m. that night, very, very quickly, his soul left the body. His soul left the body. Apparently. So, therefore, during those 3 days and 3 nights, a transfiguration took place. A transfiguration. And this is highly significant. Very significant indeed. So that is why in the earlier parables also, the parable of the seed, of the mustard seed, and it was mentioned, indicated that, so even before the other parable too, so in the seed of the parable, it was indicated that when you sow the seed in the soil, in the Mother Earth, the seed goes through a transformation. The seed gets transmuted into a plant. So that takes a few days. So here also, during these 3 days and 3 nights, the transfiguration of Jesus from his crucifixion to resurrection must transpire. Now, this is also to indicate to you that when a person enters into mystic absorption, technically it is called as samadhi. When a person enters into samadhi, wherein he is self-absorbed, then during this process wherein he is self-absorbed, at times for hours and at times for days, a transmutation is taking place in the individual. So to indicate this also, this concept of transfiguration of Jesus was indicated, that an individual too, he entered into samadhi as an individual. Any individual enters into a state of samadhi as an individual. But when he gets into samadhi, he goes through a process and is transmuted as the divine. And this is indicated by this phenomenon which transpired in the life of Jesus from the time of his crucifixion to his transfiguration. Wherein he came out and he was seen thereafter for 40 days. Now, in order to indicate this truth, Jesus manifested this transfiguration. He manifested otherwise there is no other reason to do this. Why did Jesus do this? So that is why it says, he leadeth James and John and Peter up into a high mountain and was transfigured before them. That is, he appeared very differently from what they had known him and known and seen him as Jesus. And then at that time, what happened to him? And his raiment became shining. And in the transfiguration, his raiment, his cloth, the cloth that he wore was shining, exceedingly white as snow, because it has undergone a transmutation. So as no floor on earth can white them, and nothing more can whiten them. It was so white ethereally white. And then at the same time, there appeared unto them Elias with Moses, the prophet Elias, Elijah and Moses. They also appeared at the same time when Jesus was transfigured in this sense. And they were talking with Jesus, and they were talking with Jesus. So now this is a very mystifying phenomenon which was being perceived by the three people, by Peter, John, and James. And thereafter, after this conversation, wherein Peter was talking with the prophets Elias and Moses, they also appeared there in that setup. And after they had finished, and Peter answered and said to Jesus, and then Peter told Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here, and let us make 3 tabernacles. So now, Peter, as usual, he says, oh, Master, let us live on here. This is such a wonderful thing which has happened here. Let us all be here. And we will make 3 tabernacles. One for you, one for Elias, the prophet, and one for Moses. Let us make 3 tabernacles, and one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elias. For he did not know what to say. He just had to say something. So this is what he said, Peter. He was a bubbling Peter. The whole experience was too much for him to assimilate. So he had to bubble out with something, and he bubbled out in this manner, by muttering this. For he wished not what to say, for he did not know what to say. And they were at the same time very afraid. When you see such a phenomenon, ethereal phenomenon like this, naturally you would be indeed not only surprised, mystified, but you will also be highly afraid too of perceiving such a phenomenon taking place. And then at the same time, what happened? And there was after they had spoken in this manner, then in line number 7 it is mentioned, and there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a cloud came and overshadowed them. The 4 of them who were there, it overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, saying, this is my beloved son, hear him. So the voice is the voice of God. So that's also rather unusual. You cannot see God. God does not make himself visible to you in that way. But through a covering called the cloud, a dense cloud, he will speak to you. He will speak to you. Because God, you can't see God because God has no form. He has no form. But he can speak to you. So he creates a cloud, and via the cloud, so that he speaks to you. So here also, that's exactly what happened. So this is my beloved son. The second time that God is using these terms. When Jesus was earlier baptized by John in the Jordan River, there also God said, this is my beloved son, with whom I am pleased. Why am I pleased? Because he is my obedient son. He is obedient. Therefore, he is a good son. This is my beloved son, whom I love. And then he says one thing more. Hear him. Hear what he says, what my son says, what Jesus says. Hear him. It's a commandment to say that. Stop and hear. Carefully hear. So whatever Jesus was saying, hear him. Hear him very carefully. Hear him. And suddenly, when they had looked around about, they saw no man anymore, save Jesus only with themselves. And suddenly, The voice disappeared, the clouds disappeared, and then Elias and Moses also disappeared. They saw no man anymore. They didn't see anybody else save Jesus and on Jesus only with themselves. They only saw Jesus along with themselves, the three. So here was an incident wherein Jesus transfigured himself. It's like the transfiguration of Jesus, which is a very mystifying phenomenon which happened. And why it happened is something baffling and mystifying to people. But it did happen. And perhaps it was to indicate to you that between crucifixion and resurrection, the transfiguration transpires. The transfiguration transpires. So this transfiguration transpires also for every individual who enters into a state of mystic absorption, wherein he gets absorbed with God. So when you get absorbed with God, you become one with God. And in that process of becoming one with God, there is a transfiguration which transpires, and you lose your old self as a human individual, and you undergo a transfiguration with your new status which you had regained as the divine. So this is the implication there. And as they came down from the mountain, line number 9, he charged them, he told them that they should tell no man but what things they had seen. That they should not tell anybody what they had seen, because people will be baffled. They'll be mystified. That they should tell no man what things they had seen till the Son of Man were risen from the dead. So don't tell anybody until the Son of Man has risen from the dead. So once again, that statement, the Son of Man has risen from the dead, is mystifying to the disciples. They couldn't understand what it meant also. But they would know that after the resurrection has taken place, then they will remember what Jesus told them. At the time of after transfiguration, what Jesus told them, they would remember then only. So that is why till the Son of Man were risen from the dead. After that you can tell. That piece of information you can tell after. That's perfectly all right, because that is meant for your education, for your spiritual education. That is why this incident, that this transfiguration transpired. And they kept that saying with themselves, and what he said, they kept it to themselves, questioning one with another what the rising from the dead should mean. And they were discussing it among themselves. They didn't want to tell anybody else. What is this meaning, that rising from the dead? What does it mean? We had never come across this. Rising from the dead, what does it mean? Then after that, another situation happens. And in the next line, line number 11, a new section comes in. And they asked him, saying, the disciples asked Jesus, saying, why say the scribes that Elias must first come? The scribes, who are the biblical scholars, they were saying that before the Messiah comes, the prophet Elias must come. The prophet Elias must come, because it had been so prophesied that before the Messiah comes, prophet Elias would come and pave the way. Will pave the way for the coming of Jesus, of the Messiah. And to this he answered and told them. So they were questioning this. Why is it that the prophet Elias, he should come before the Messiah? But what about prophet Elias? We don't know whether he has come or not. That's what the disciples were asking. And then Jesus answered and told them, so Jesus also mentions that in the prophecy, it was stated that Elias would come first, and it is also said that the Son of Man means Jesus, must suffer many things, that he has to undergo a lot of difficulties and suffering, and be set at naught and be killed, and set at naught and be killed. But I say unto you, but I tell you, that Elias is indeed come, but prophet Elias has already come, and they have done unto him whatsoever they listed, and they have done unto him, they have done exactly what had been mentioned in the Old Testament, what had been prophesied in the Old Testament, as it is written of him, as it had been written about the prophet Elias. So that prophet Elias was John the Baptist. He had come as John the Baptist, and they had done to John the Baptist as it had been prophesied earlier. They had killed him. So John the Baptist was killed, as it is written of him. So therefore, now these is wherein Jesus mentions that the prophet Elias, that John the Baptist was the prophet Elias who had come, as prophesied in the scriptures. Because one thing you must remember, the prophecies in the scriptures cannot go wrong. They will take place, because those prophecies are revealed by God. As such, they are bound to happen. And that is exactly what happened there. And when he came to his disciples, line number 14, he saw a great multitude about them, and the scribes questioning with them. And then when Jesus came back to all his other disciples, he saw a great multitude of people and the scribes discussing matters with them. And straight away all the people, when they beheld him, were greatly amazed, and running to him saluted him. And when the people saw Jesus, they were greatly amazed and were running to him and saluted him, because now Jesus had undergone an ethereal transformation in the Transfiguration. So when that happens, a person's overall appearance undergoes a radical change. So this must have amazed the people around. And they were greatly amazed and running to him, and they saluted him, So it is said that when a person has the divine experience, then thereafter there appears in him the glory of God. The glory of God is, in a sense, visible in that person. The brilliance of God. When I say the glory of God, the brilliance of God, Brahma Tejas, is called as Brahma Tejas. Brahma Tejas means the brilliance of Brahman, of the divine. In Sanskrit terminology, it's called Brahma Tejas. And that is manifest in this person. So here also, it must have been the case with Jesus too after the Transfiguration. And the people were greatly amazed at seeing him in this wondrous form. Of course, he was Jesus, but with a wondrous appearance. And came to him and saluted him, and they all saluted him. And then he asked the scribes, what question you with them? What are you discussing with these people? He asked the scribes. And then at that time, what happened? One of the multitude answered and said, one of those people who had gathered, they had come to see, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. I have brought into thy presence my son, who has been possessed by a spirit which is dumb. A spirit which is dumb has entered my little son. And thereafter, now the other text is a little more clearer, so I will read that. Yes, here it is. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." So, this was a spirit which has possessed the son of this particular man, and it was acting in this manner as described in the text. And it would put him on the ground, throw him to the ground, foams would come out of his mouth, and he would gnash his teeth, and become rigid. And your disciples could not do anything about it when I took him to your disciples. He answered him and said, and Jesus answered and told him, "O faithless generation, how shall I be with you? How long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him unto me." O faithless generation. Of course, people in the world have lukewarm faith in God. That intense faith is missing. Now, when you take a little boy or a little girl who is living with you in your own home, the little boy or a little girl of 4 or 5 years old, say 3, 4, or 5 years old, has got intense faith in a mother or in a father. That's a great faith they have, that in times of difficulty and danger, that they will be protected by their mother or father. That's a faith the little child has. So this type of faith people do not have with respect to God. Majority of the people do not have that. They have only a lukewarm faith because they are grown-ups. So they function with a different mind state. And they don't have that much of faith in God. So that is why he says, "Oh, you faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? For how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? How long shall I endure you? Bring this boy, bring him unto me, bring him here." And they brought him unto him, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tear him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed foaming. And he was brought into the presence of Jesus, and straightway the spirit gripped the boy, and the boy fell to the ground and wallowed foaming. So the spirit straightway came out, and he asked his father, and the spirit came out, and the boy fell to the ground, wallowing and wallowed foaming. And he asked his father, "How long is it ago since this came unto him?" And he said, "Oh, of a child. Since when has this boy got into this terrible situation?" And the father replied, "Since when? Since he was a little boy. Oftentimes it had cast him into the fire, and often it cast him into the fire and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. But if you can do something about it, have compassion on us and help us. Then Jesus replied, Jesus said unto him, if thou can believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. So Jesus told the man, if you will only believe that this boy will be restored normal, then all things are possible to him that believeth. Whoever believeth in the good Lord with all his heart and with all his soul and mind, then for such a person, anything is possible. All things are possible. And so therefore, if thou can believe all things are possible to him that believeth. So he who believes it, there are one thing, and that is that if you believe with all your heart and with all your mind and soul, then God can do anything. God has a capacity to do anything. But it all depends on how much you believe it, that you believe it. And the next is that you believe. Your belief should be so strong that you should understand that God exists in you and that you exist in God. This belief also should be there, very firmly rooted and embedded within yourself. It's a conviction. It's a conviction. It's not a formal thing that I am in God and God is in me. I exist in God and God is present within me, exists within me, which means that God and I are one. So when this understanding dawns with good faith, unshakable faith, so people often ask this question, which is a wrong question: what is your faith? Implying, what is your faith means they ask you about what religion you belong to. That's a wrong question. Never ask a man. So that means when you ask, if he replies that he belongs to this religion and that religion, that means that the person does not have faith in God. You can be sure of that. So therefore, because God has no religion, remember that very carefully. So therefore, your faith is in God, that God and I are one and God is in me. And then when you have this faith in your God nature, it grows within you, and in due course, one would experience the divine within oneself, that is God within oneself. So therefore, that is why he said, all things are possible for him that believeth. And if you believe it, if you believe with all your heart and being and mind and soul, that you are one with God, then you certainly will become one with God. So now here also, that is why Jesus now using this incident to talk about faith, to talk about believe. And straight away the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. Lord, I believe you, clear my unbelief so far. When Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the foul spirit, saying unto him, Thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him and enter no more into him. So then Jesus rebuked the spirit and the dumb spirit and told him, come out of this person and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried out and rent him sore and came out of him. And the spirit rent him sore and came out of him. and he was as one dead, and the boy fell down as if he were dead. That many said he is dead, and the others around saw the boy fallen on the ground. They said he is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him up, and he arose. But Jesus just took him by the hand, lifted him up, and the boy arose. The boy arose into life. And when he was coming to the house, his disciples asked him privately, why could not we cast him out? So the disciples privately, they asked Jesus, we tried to bring out the spirit, but we could not do it. Why is it? And Jesus replied, and he said unto them, because Jesus had empowered his disciples to cast out spirits from people. He had empowered them, but they could not do it in this particular instance. So they said, so they asked him why they couldn't do it. Then Jesus replied, this kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. So this type of spirit can only be brought out of a person by intense prayer and fasting. Now, intense prayer and fasting. Generally, this is done by a holy person. Holy person is in communion prayers, is in communion with God at all times. And at the same time, that is by prayer and fasting. So one has to go through a fasting period, and then at the same time be totally absorbed in God for some time. Then by that process, a certain amount of new power enters into this person so that this spirit can be cast off. So you have to make a special effort. A special effort has to be made to cast out such difficult spirits. And line number 30, and they departed thence and passed through Galilee, and he would not that any man should know it. And they passed through Galilee, the town of Galilee, near the lake of Galilee, and he wanted to be quiet, so he told these disciples and others that they should not tell anybody where he is. For he taught his disciples and said unto them, for during this period, and wherever he was with his disciples, he taught them. What he taught them he taught them particularly. So when you are with a teacher privately, he always keeps on teaching you many things separately, which are not taught in public. So that's in public, there is one type of teaching. But in private, the teaching becomes more intense and a special teaching is given. So he taught his disciples and said unto them, then he told them once again, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men. The Son of Man, that is Jesus, will be delivered into the hands of men. They shall kill him, and after he is killed, he shall rise again the third day. So once again, he's making a prophecy about himself, that he will be killed, and after 3 days rise again. After 3 days. So this 3 days is being mentioned over and over again, number of times by Jesus. But the disciples could not comprehend its meaning and sense as to what it means that he shall rise again on the third day. But they understood not that saying and were afraid to ask him. But they didn't properly understand what he meant by that. But at the same time, they were a little afraid to ask him. Then, in line number 33, he says, and he came to Capernaum. Capernaum was a place, was a town, and being in the house, he asked them. And being in the house of Peter, very often it seems as if Jesus had his headquarters in the house of Peter. In the house of Peter, he spent a good deal of time. So that was his sort of main point from where he would go about here and there, and always return back to the house of Peter. He asked them, what was it that you disputed among yourselves, by the way? In the meantime, while you are coming into the house, you people were disputing about something. What was it that you were talking and disputing among themselves? But they held their peace, but they didn't want to tell what it is, because they were discussing something not very correct. And Jesus knew it, and so he wanted to bring it out. What was it that what was it that you were discussing? But they held their peace, for by the way, they had disputed amongst themselves, who should be the greatest. So that was their dispute. That means, which of the disciples is the greatest disciple? The same old problem. The disciples are there, and one of them wants to feel that he is the greatest of all the others. And Jesus knew this. So he gave a reply. And he sat down and called the 12, and said unto them, if any man desire to be first, the same shall be last of all and servant of all. So that's the answer to the question, who is the greatest amongst all the disciples? So a true disciple and a good disciple and the best disciple is that person. He should be the last of all, that is to say, and servant of all. That is to say, a true disciple does not immediately go and take the head place. He makes all others sit down to eat. And then after everybody had sat down to eat, then he would find a place anywhere else and go and sit down. That is the work of a noble person. While an arrogant person, an arrogant disciple, would straight away go and take the first place and expect to be served by others. But the noblest disciple would be that person who would serve everybody else, having served everybody else, that is to say, the best disciple is the disciple who is humble in his ways. That's what it means. In simple letters, in simple language, the greatest disciple and the best disciple is a humble disciple. Not a disciple with arrogance and vanity and sense of ego that I am the best. He doesn't feel it so. He doesn't feel it so. So the best disciple is that who is humble, because all of those disciples that come to serve, they have come to serve humanity around, not to be served, but to serve. There's a difference. So that is why he says, because he had chosen the 12 to serve humanity, not to be served, but to serve humanity, to help humanity, to look after humanity. So that's why he says, he shall be the last of all, and the servant of all is the first indeed. And then he gave an example. He took a child and set him in the midst of them. He took a child and set in the midst of them, and when he had taken him in his arms, he said unto them, so there was a child standing close by, and he lifted the child and took the child in his arms. And then he said unto them, whosoever shall receive one of such children in my name, receiveth me. Whosoever whichever person in the world shall receive one of such children in my name. So who are the children of God? The ones who have got a childlike nature. So the ones with a childlike nature are the ones who are hermits, are the spiritual minded people. They have got a childlike nature because they have no guile in them. They have the innocence of a child. One of the characteristics of a holy man is that they have sweet innocence about them. They have got a sweet innocence. And they have got a childlike nature, like a childlike nature. So that's one of the characteristics of these holy people. Whoever shall receive one of such children, so that is one of such children, a childlike nature, full of innocence, not a person who is clever, who is smart, who is cunning. Those are not the signs. Those are not they are the reverse signs. They are the opposite signs. So that one who has got a sweet innocence, so the holy people who are in the way of God, they have got this, they manifest this sweet innocence about them. And do you know something very intriguing and interesting? These saintly people who are hermit by nature have got a sweet innocence about them. And the ones who first perceive the sweet innocence of these saintly people are children. The children are automatically drawn towards such people. They have got an instinctive nature about them that when they see a saintly person or a hermit, when they see a true monk or a true nun, immediately little children automatically gravitate towards them. Automatically it happens. Because instinctively they know that here is one like them, not an arrogant person. Of course, the hermit may look wild with a big beard, but the child sees something else. Child sees through into the person, into this person, and knows. Instinctively it perceives and knows. So the children are the first ones to recognize the saintliness of a person. So that is why he lifted up the child and said, whoever shall receive one of such children in my name, receiveth me. Because these people, these are the children of God. These are the true children of God. And whoever shall receive them, wherever they are, in my name, in God's name, because wherever and whenever a hermit goes around in any part of the world, in any nation, right? He is received by people because he has to go about looking for his alms, and people receive him and give him a little alms. So therefore he says, in my name receiveth me. So when they receive such a person and offer him alms, truly speaking, they receive me. When they give him accommodation, when they give him when they receive him, provide a basic amenities towards him, wherever he goes, in whichever part of the world. And so receiveth, and they receive me only. And whoever shall receive me, receiveth not me, but him that sent me. See the difference? But whoever receiveth me, whoever receiveth the hermit, receiveth me. But whoever receives me, receiveth not me, but the one who sent me. The one who sent me is God. He receives God in his heart. Because this hermit is a living representative of God. He's a living representative. He stands there to represent God. That is why when Lord Buddha perceived a hermit, a sannyasi, he inquired, who is this person and what is he? This unusual person. And then Buddha too became a sannyasi, a hermit. He was charmed and attracted by the presence of the hermit who stood for God. So therefore Buddha also followed suit soon after. He was inspired. He was inspired to follow the ways of the noble persons. So he says, but him that resent me, but he receives. So therefore, when you receive such a person, you don't receive me as Jesus, but you receive him who sent me, that is. So Jesus is once again indicating that he came from God, that he is a Messiah. Indirectly he is mentioning this. And John answered him saying, Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and he followeth not us. And we forbade him, because he followeth not us. And John said, well, Master, we saw somebody else there, but in your name, he's not one of our followers, but he was casting out devils in thy name. And Jesus said, forbid him not, for don't stop him. For there is no man which shall do a miracle in my name that can lightly speak evil of me. For there is no man in my name, if he does something good, then he cannot speak evil or negative about me. It's not possible, because he is in my name. This person who is not a follower of ours, if he does it, then Jesus says, for he that is not against us is on our part. So since he is not against us, but he is doing what we are also doing, so therefore he is on our part, he is on our side. So he is not against us. Then he says, for whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because you belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. For whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name. So in the name of God, if the disciples were given even a cup of water to drink, because you belong to Christ, because you belong to me, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. That particular person who has so provided to one of my disciples, he shall not lose his reward, whatever it be, because he has done something meritorious and good in my name to my disciples. Therefore he shall obtain the reward, the due reward, the due reward. Then the next section is something very interesting and unusual, which we'll look into tomorrow. Om Tat Sat.